Hi, everybody, and hello to you, Lynn.
Hi.
Welcome to our little chat. We're going to talk about this wonderful upcoming class that I am so excited about and beyond. And it's called Entering a New Era, which apparently we have chaos and opportunities. And even yesterday, I listened to an astronomer's presentation on the lineup of the planets that are happening in the celestial world, and an astronomer, not astrologer, an astronomer, and then talking about all the phenomenal astronomical, excuse me, celestial lineups that are going to be happening this year, which apparently is just a rare year on board for the heavens. Um, Unfortunately, or for whatever, astronomers do not do the interpretation of the power of of planets, but I like to think of them as the mechanical molecules that are governing the flow of forces that then interact in our life. So I'm incredibly excited about this because even astronomers are looking to the heavens, but I prefer talking to my dear friend Lynn, who tells me what it means because that's what matters to all of us.
Well, Nina, I just came in. There's a conjunction of the crescent moon and Venus tonight. The sky here was it's a gorgeous day. And in the sky, there's actually things you can't see. Those you can see right now. You might see them later. But there's an extraordinary lineup, effectively, of planets right now that indicate an opening of the heart, an opening of our spiritual energy at the same time that other things are going
Well,
on.
why don't we jump into this class
Yeah.
and talk about just give a small preview of the delicious class you're going to be offering.
Well, we're going to be talking about the big thing this year is that many planets are changing signs. And we're moving, particularly Neptune. Neptune is the planet that rules the whole archetypal level of the unconscious. And Neptune is moving out of Pisces, where it's been like we've all been in some kind of soup, taking in collective information without knowing what's real, what's not real.
That would be like the era of fake news,
The era of fake news is
the
Neptune.
incredible era of fake news, of deception, of
Mm,
fog,
yeah.
which has paralyzed this planet.
Yes, Neptune in Pisces has made the irrational dominant in a way. A sort of it's as if, for example, in France, people used to write cursive. They used to learn handwriting. It was a really big deal. They don't teach that anymore. And probably in America too. So the whole idea of the hand mind connection is has changed. It's different. There's a way that we anchor what we know in reality, the way we anchor it in our body, that we anchor it by seeing it in our environment. We no longer do that. We go down all the rabbit holes, and that's Neptune in Pisces. And Neptune is about to enter Aries. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the first degree of Aries has an extraordinary creative.
Wasn't
So
that isn't that called like the first degree of creation?
we call it the Aries point.
The Aries point. Okay.
Right. I mean, there are theories. There are theories that creation happened when all the planets were together, for example. That's one theory. But, we haven't found that happen exactly. So,
So when Neptune moves into Aries, how will the collective sense that?
well, one of the, I mean, I think we're already feeling it. Aries is the sign of, it's a very masculine sign. It's the sign of the warrior. It's the sign of the manly, um, forward moving action. Let's not just stay passive, but make something happen. So we can already see some of these energies. I mean, there's a whole, one of the things we'll talk about in the class is how those um, we can already see people talking about the warrior ethos, for example. And I mean, this is never, it's neither good or bad. It's just the archetypal energy that's being highlighted, that's being brought out of, you could say, the great um, ocean of possibilities.
Mhm.
And not only does Neptune go, so we don't know, Neptune hasn't been in Aries. The last time it entered Aries was 164 years ago.
Well,
So we don't actually, there are, I'll be talking about that, what happened the last time. Um, but it's not just Neptune entering Aries, Carolyn. In May, Saturn also enters Aries. Now, this is extremely unusual to have two planets that cross over this point, what we call the Aries point, a very creative. One of the qualities of in the northern hemisphere. It's the spring equinox, so the days sort of suddenly grow wildly. Every light grows at a very strong pace, and the meaning of Aries, the birth of the new, is very strong whenever any planet goes over that one.
and Saturn is the planet associated with structure and form.
Right, and it's not considered extremely happy in Aries. In fact, we say that it's in its detriment.
That's
And
not something ordinary people would understand.
no, but we could say that Saturn is a sign that gives limits, right? Um, it it's too tough in Aries. Basically, it encourages toughness and strength over empathy and understanding, right? So that could be an issue with Saturn in Aries, is that there is um, a desire to make things happen that doesn't take into account the emotions of others. Now, all of us have this very early degrees of Aries somewhere in our chart. For each of us, will be feeling that it's great to have exciting, innovative Aries energy, but there's almost a too muchness of it in the beginning. But that's only the things that's happening, Carolyn.
We were talking about I'll just some how Saturn is overly strong in Aries,
Mhm,
and it favors a kind of toughness
mhm.
as opposed to an openness, receptivity, kindness, which are all qualities of Pisces. And there's a desire to, maybe take the shears out and cut branches way back.
You're already seeing this, I think, in some of the decisions that are being made to cut out any language that people require to identify their sexuality. If they're to cut out to anything that comes from that place of personal identity is just getting cut.
Yeah, we're seeing this already. The planets are there. One of the planets that did change signs, and we spoke about this a couple of years ago, Carolyn, when we did something together, is Pluto is in Aquarius. And Pluto in Aquarius is a revolutionary planet. It's the new ideology. It's the absolute. Some people believe they have the truth, and their truth is the only truth. Um,
Well, that
so
would explain Project 2025.
For example, if we want to go there. Yeah, so Pluto in Aquarius is the power of very strong ideologies to say this is the way that things must be done. The last time we had Pluto in Aquarius was a few years into the American Revolution. So the American Revolution started in 1776. And by 1778, Pluto had entered Aquarius. 1778-9, and Pluto stayed in Aquarius from 1789 to 1799. So the period
1779 to 1790.
1779
Yeah.
to 1799, 20 years. So the whole time of the American Revolutionary War and the founding of our Constitution, but also the whole time of the French Revolution until Napoleon came to power.
Mhm.
So Pluto in Aquarius is the power of certain ideas. Aquarius is a sign of community. It's a sign of the group, and it's a power of ideas to change the group, not to change obviously there's individual truth. Aquarius is also an individual sign, but it suddenly means that there's a desire for a change within group consciousness or collective
Mhm.
consciousness. Okay. And we can feel this in many places in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, it could inspire
Mhm.
all kinds of groups, not just fascist groups, not just repressive groups.
Yes, and I think it could inspire many group. There are many collectives of people who are forming around an idea of what is true, what is good,
Mhm.
what is progress for humanity. One of the things that was in the news last week, Carolyn, was that the Quakers decided, or the Quakers who are very non-interventionist, non-violent,
Right.
they decided to go to court because of the decision of the government to raid places of worship.
Mhm.
And suddenly there was a movement. There was no intention to do that before, but there was a boundary taken. It says, no, worship is sacred. The
Mhm.
house of the spiritual places cannot be violated.
Mhm.
So that's an example of another idea rising, which also has power. So what will happen is different people will find those
Mhm.
are animated by another idea,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Right. What else is happening?
What else is happening? So Pluto is already in Aquarius. So a lot of what we're seeing is the Pluto coming into Aquarius. One of the things that's important to note is that Aquarius is an air sign. And for the past 14 years, the past 7 years, all the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, have been in earth signs and water signs, earth and water. And all of them are changing elements. They're changing into fire and air. Now, when you think of fire, everything is intense, it's hot, it moves quickly. When you think of air, also there's no air. Air doesn't come with a particular shape. It's
Right.
all about movement.
Right.
It's all about movement and oxygenation, right? So what will happen, and we say, I mean, we'll be talking about this in the first class, but fire needs air to burn,
Right.
right? So all the fire and air coming together suddenly increases the intensity. Okay, so we don't have it yet. The first change, we have Pluto and Aquarius, but the first outer planet going into fire is March 30th. And then again, in May,
Mhm.
uh, Saturn will go, and in July, Uranus will go into air as well. And all of these planets are coming together. They're coming together in they're related to each other in a way that favors the quickening of energy.
So that would we would experience that as the quickening of change in our life.
Yes, we'll definitely experience those, the quickening of change in our life, but also a change in ideas. You know, human beings are very adaptable, and the way they think of what matters, what's important, all of this is changing. We are all in the middle of this.
Mhm. You know how I feel like Neptune shifting from water to an air sign is like for the last 12 years or
Fire.
11 years being under water trying to see your way clearly and making decisions about which way to go, and all of a sudden you pop up above the water and you can see clearly, and you could be start to think like, what have I been thinking? I thought I
Well,
was so close to shore and I'm not.
just a quick correction there, and Neptune goes into fire. It
A
comes out
fire,
of
sorry,
water into fire.
fire.
So it's immediately like, let's go. In the tradition, fire was in the medieval tradition, and even among the Greeks, fire was the element closest to the divine.
Mhm,
the divine spark.
mhm, mhm.
Mm. So, yeah, so it's a radical change. Yeah, one of the most radical changes.
And it could spark people to say, oh, no, this is not happening."
That's right. I mean, now, on the other hand, and this is something I'll talk about in the first class, there's a lot of other stuff going on with the inner planets in the meantime. Like for example, I started by talking about how Venus is in Pisces, and conjunct the moon tonight and conjunct Neptune. So there's a lineup. There's a super grouping in Pisces as we speak. Um, but Venus is about to enter Aries on next week. Venus goes into Aries, so it's already in this initial territory, which is exciting. It's moving forward. Well, not long after Venus is in Aries, it's going to go backwards and go back into Pisces. And the same is true for the outer planets. The planets are moving into new signs, but at the end of the year, they'll go back. So whatever is emerging goes backwards later in the year and re-emerges next year for good. So 2025 is very confusing because we get the new energy, but we also get the backwards movement where we're back and forth. So it's not clear. That's why it can feel very chaotic
Mhm.
because there's no real definite clarity. Okay, this is it. It's like, oh no, we're back here.
Mhm. So, there's so much. How about describing your 4 classes?
Okay.
Let's start with the first one, outer planets moving to air and fire, learning to fly and learning by fire. Yum,
That
yum.
well, that's a little bit what we were just talking about,
Right,
is how, things that have seemed quiet and stable, nothing seems quiet and stable right now.
right,
And even the airplane crashes,
right.
that
And the
there's
fires, the fires.
and the fires.
Mm,
Yeah. I mean, this sense of the whole world feels out of control. And it's kind of I noticed someone said that there was this medevac helicopter crash in
in
Philadelphia,
Philadelphia, 7
and
people killed.
plane yeah, really very, very sad, and the plane crashed in Washington. Well, those are the 2 capitals of the United States,
Right, right,
Philadelphia and Washington.
right, yes. The first and the present, yes.
Like,
Oh my.
things falling out of the sky. Now, the sky, of course, is air. It's the domain of air, and Pluto is there, and we can kind of feel. One of the things I think about Pluto and Aries, how much, well, remember the end of the year, everybody went crazy about drones in New Jersey.
Right, 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 right,
Okay. And then suddenly that disappeared.
right,
But everybody's like, what's going on?
right, right.
What's above our head? And even last year, there was a rogue Chinese balloon flying over the United States with all kinds of measuring instruments. Do you remember that?
Mhm. Yes.
But the sky will not be the sky that we've known in the past. Okay, our relationship with the sky is changing radically during this time. Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, class 2, Fools Rush In, Neptune in Aries.
Well, Fools Rush In, this song, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Fools rush in, where
Well,
angels fear to tread.
right. Okay. So, in fact, that's what Aries is like. And Neptune is it's wonderful to think about Neptune. Neptune both connects us with something enormous and unbounded, but it's not a planet of analysis, rationality, and clarity. It's quite the opposite. It's a planet of divine inspiration. And it lights something up in people. It's kind of, that it lights the wick, uh, that gives people more heat, more
Uh,
fire, more energy to move forward. But it also people rush into movement, but they don't actually know what they're doing necessarily. right? It isn't, it's kind of like, okay, let's just go, let's do it, and then we'll see what happens, right?
That's what's happening. Hmm.
One of I have a friend, you know my friend in New Orleans, Randy, and they have this ceremony every year where they take Lady Liberty and they buried they did a funeral for Lady Liberty, and they said, in Mardi Gras, the fool and the king change places, and they were saying that it's like, we have no idea, like all the archetypes are changing. That's what it's like. So it's totally unrecognizable,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Okay, the third class. A world dissolves and a new vision arises.
Well, so this class is about, and there will be other things in here, but these are the main themes of these classes. This class is about the coming together of Saturn and Neptune. Now, outside the planetary signatures, Um, there are cycles where planets have a relationship with each other, just like the moon has a cycle from new moon to full moon. Saturn and Neptune come together every 36 years, about.
Mhm,
Now,
mhm.
the last time they conjuncted was 1989. What happened in 1989? Well, the Berlin Wall fell. Okay, that incredible image. So it's almost the boundaries, which are represented by Saturn and Neptune, the dissolving planet, the solutio, if you like, the kind of fluid, the solution in which you put things, you dip them to make them more permeable, let's say. Those two things come together. So one of the things it means is that the structures of our world are less solid with Saturn, Neptune.
That was also the Reagan administration. And as you know, Reagan dissolved the boundary between church and state in the beginning. He was the one that began to say, "Oh, I think the Republicans could be the party of Christianity."
Didn't it isn't 80 isn't didn't Bush get elected in '88? Wasn't
Yeah,
that
but yeah,
was
88, but I mean, it was in that era of 88, 87. I
yeah.
mean, this would have been still influential.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm an astrologer, so I'm like, time is like really pointed specific with these cycles, but the previous cycle was 1952. And then, anyway, when those people who are born with these aspects, they have an ability to kind of go beyond the ordinary boundaries of seeing, touching, feeling, um, and receiving other information. So there are very positive things about this cycle that I want to talk about as well. And it's a cycle where we're bringing in a new vision of the world, Carol, a new vision. And we don't know the quality of that vision, right?
Right, right,
Mm.
right, right. But it's time.
Yeah, it's
It's
time.
time. It's time that this planet join the galactic community. It's time that it expand and move toward becoming a planetary community.
Mm,
And that's we won't live to see that, but we are living to see the download of the instruction go this way.
yeah, that's right. And, we also know that because everything is changing, we, on some level, are being called to participate
Mhm.
in the new structure that's coming in. Now, that new structure, Saturn and Neptune, they kind of go back and forth, but they actually make their conjunction in the spring of 2026, but the cycle is already active. So this is a very big deal, and we'll be looking a lot at how it works in time, how it works on the mystical level, how it works on a historical level, how it works on calling us to hold a particular image of where we're going.
Mhm. And finally, Uranus and Gemini walking the mind, seeing the split. Waking the mind, sorry. Waking the mind, seeing
Walking the mind. That's a kind of interesting image. We could walk the mind on a leash, like like a kind of right. Whoa. Yeah. This is because Gemini, of all the air signs, Gemini is also an air sign. It's the first air sign. It's ruled by the twins. So there's always more than one, right? And so, um, one of the things that's happened with Gemini is for the United States, every time that has been in Gemini, we've been at war. So we had the Revolutionary War, Uranus was in Gemini. The Civil War, Uranus was in Gemini. And when we entered World War II, Uranus had gone into Gemini and backed into Taurus, but it went into Taurus like a month later. So during the time we were fighting World War II. So Uranus in Gemini, Uranus is a planet that wakes us up. Okay. Uranus is like the lightning bolt. It's a kind of pull.
Ignition.
I can't stay sleepwalking anymore, right? So if we've been sleepwalking,
It's
it
an igniter.
it's an igniter, absolutely. All
Mhm,
right. It's like somebody takes the lighter and the whole system lights up like something that's been in the dark the whole.
mhm.
So Uranus doesn't go into Gemini until July, and it's only there for a few months this year, but it's very, very powerful in Gemini. And because Gemini has to do with dark and light, yes and no, um, the two sides of things. And one of the things Gemini can do is really split things into you're totally wrong and I'm totally right. Okay. So Uranus and Gemini will be there for 7 years. So each of these planetary changes, we're just getting the initial input of it right now. Its full manifestation we might not see completely this year, but the full manifestation of Uranus in Gemini is either you're able to be conscious of the opposites and hold them together in a larger truth, or you will split apart. Okay. So, yeah, it's a,
Well,
it's,
I think this class sounds absolutely incredible.
it's so important. I mean, we astrologers, everyone is saying we've never seen anything quite like this. And in the first class, I'll talk a little bit about the process. I mean, we began the year with Mars retrograde. As soon as Mars goes direct, Venus goes retrograde. And when Venus goes direct, Mercury goes retrograde. So we have a series of looping planets looping through the zodiac as if we're like, oh, you think you're going forward? No, no, wait a minute, come back. Wait, come back. And then, okay, go forward. No, wait, come back.
Mhm, mhm.
So the beginning of the year has a very strong period of inner processing, of taking things in, of letting them settle and wait within ourselves.
You can feel that.
You
You
can,
you you can feel it. You can feel in action what in so many quarters of people just, "Wait a minute here, what's going on?"
right. That's exactly how things are
Mhm,
beginning this year.
mhm,
And it's fascinating. So I'm going to talk about this very powerful process for the first three, let's say 3, even 4 months of the year,
mhm.
where everything in a way is we move forward, but we get pulled back to reconsider. And then we go forward again. It's almost like we have to remember something or
Yeah,
be in a real, not just be reacting, but in a very strong relationship with something fundamental in ourselves.
like the Constitution.
The freedom of worship, that's what the
Right,
questions are
right, exactly.
right, of saying this is like there's these sudden actions that are just nothing's making sense,
Mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
Nobody knows where they're gonna end up in a way. I mean, a few people do, but, uh, it's hard to know where everything will fall out for this.
I know, but wow, what a time. This really is living history.
Yeah, it's a living history, and there is another planetary change, by the way, that we haven't even talked about. And so these big planets,
Yeah.
I've never seen all three of them change in such a short period of time. Right? Never.
Mhm.
Um, in addition, Jupiter will change signs this year. Jupiter is in Gemini right now. It's going into Cancer. So, and now that's a really extraordinary thing, Carolyn, because we say Jupiter is the planet that gives, that is,
Mhm, mhm,
it's full of generosity, fecundity, guidance.
mhm.
And Jupiter in June, on June 9th, actually, it's going to go into the sign where it's considered exalted. Uh,
Ooh, happy birthday.
yeah, right. It goes into Cancer. And so there is a counter force. Jupiter goes into Cancer, which has to do with caring for things. And that starts to be very starts to be there in a powerful way as well with all the other things that are happening, and because
You
there's
know
a
what this
whole,
reminds me of? The story of Pandora's box.
oh yeah.
Honestly, where, they open the box and every single possible turmoil for human experience is released because Pandora opened her box, but there was hope in the bottom.
Right, 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 there's hope. You're right, Carolyn. There's at the bottom, yeah. I think there's always hope, and there's also very strong energy in the first, very strong disruptive energy in in the spring, in March in particular, and I'll talk about that in the first class. So,
Well, I have to say, I am so eager for this class. And I have said, Lynn and I have been friends, I don't know, almost 40 years. I don't remember. But honestly, if I could have someone else's brain, I'd take yours.
yeah, no, no, I'd take yours.
Yeah. Everyone, I
You
hope you
want
join it.
your-
I mean, this is going to be a delicious class. And I especially love it because I'm going to be learning right alongside you. And I just feel like we need insight and hope into what we all know is a very tumultuous time. There's, I take great comfort in knowing that when I look at the planets and from the perspective of planets and planetary forces, everything's on schedule. So somehow this turmoil, somehow this change, somehow these ruptures that we are living through were scheduled in some way because those planets were always going to have these alignments. Even, if we looked 30 years ago, she could have said, well, come 2025, there's going to be an extraordinary lineup,
Mm,
which meant that organically it's time to shake things up so that something new can come out of it.
yeah, it's true. And the thing is, it's collective. But then remember that all as these planets move, they're all interfacing with our individual charts in our individual lives, and they're waking up new things in us.
Right.
Uh,
Precisely.
and that is very exciting as well.
Absolutely. And you'll address that. And our class starts on February 11th, and then the 13th, the 18th, and the 20th. I love it. I love the time. I mean, it starts at noon my time, which is Central, and 7 for Europe, and 1 for East Coast. So that would be 10 in the morning for California. But everything's on the website. You can already register, and I can't wait for this.
This will be exciting. And not only that, people on the other side of the world in Australia,
Right.
they can watch the recording.
Right. I mean, you could take the class. Actually, you could take the class whenever you want. Sign up, and it'll just be delivered to you. So,
Yeah, but it's always exciting when it's
yeah,
live.
yeah,
There's something about being live that's really extraordinary, isn't there?
yeah. There
You're
is.
there in the
I
making.
just adore teaching with you. I do. You know it.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay, everybody. Thank you, and we'll see you on February 11th when we begin this wonderful, wonderful class, entering a new era. Thank you, everyone.